14th of September, just in case I forget. 2021, I should mention as well. And today is a very special day, very, very special day, which we say many times, and it's very hard to determine, like everything really in spiritual life. It has so many angles and perspectives, and so many considerations that we can take into account, etc. But today definitely is one of the most auspicious and special days in the Vaishnava calendar, as it is the appearance of Srimad-Bhagavatam, Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. And one reason why it's so special is because Radharani is the eternal consort. What an extraordinary, unique, incredible role to have, that you're the eternal consort of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Radharani is known as the best devotee of Krishna, the most surrendered devotee of Krishna. Krishna even once said in relation to Srimati Radharani, "Na parayaham, I cannot repay you." Can you imagine the Supreme Personality of Godhead saying that to you? That I can never repay you for your surrender, your service, your absolute surrender. That there is nothing that Radharani, Srimati Radharani, would not do for Lord Krishna. And Srimati Radharani is the internal energy and the internal pleasure potency of Lord Shri Krishna. You know, Lord Krishna, in the Hare Krishna mantra we chant Ram, and one meaning of the word Ram is the reservoir of all pleasure. Krishna is the reservoir of all pleasure. So Krishna, his internal pleasure potency is Srimati Radharani. So yeah, extraordinary personality, Radharani, and this is her appearance day. And we pray to Srimati Radharani because, as we mentioned, that she's the pleasure potency of Lord Krishna. So we pray to Radharani, asking her to, if you like, in colloquial language, to put in a good word for us to Lord Krishna because of her unique situation. So she's the pleasure potency of Lord Krishna, and as we know, the word Krishna means all attractive. One of the meanings of the word Krishna is all attractive. So the extraordinary situation with Radharani is that Krishna himself is all attractive, yet she attracts Krishna. So he's all attractive, but yet Radharani, she attracts Krishna. So again, what is the position of Radharani? So we pray to Krishna, as I was saying, we pray to Krishna to understand the position of Radharani, and as I say, that if Radharani puts in a good word for us, then we're in an extraordinary, wonderful situation. So let's offer our obeisances to Srimati Radharani today. Dhatte kanchana gaurange radha vrindavaneshwari vishabhanu sukhe deve pranamai hari priya. And Hari Priya means that very dear to Lord Hari, very dear to Krishna. So we're saying that I offer my respectful obeisances to Srimati Radharani, whose bodily complexion is like, it's described as molten gold, that beautiful golden colour. So we offer our respectful obeisances to Srimati Radharani, whose bodily complexion is like molten gold, and she is the queen of Vrindavan, Vrindavaneshwari. She's the queen of Vrindavan. And she's the daughter of King Vrishabhanu, and of course Hari Priya, she is very, very dear to Lord Krishna. So have a wonderful festival today on this appearance day of Srimati Radharani. But now I will go to the verse and the purport that I was asked to speak on today. Before I do that, we'll just chant jahyād. So again, Srimati Radharani ki jai, Hare Krishna. Jahyād kunja bihari Kunjabihari Jaya Gopi Ganaballava Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Ganaballava Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Munatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Jaya Gopi Ganavallava Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Ganavallava Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Jaya Gopi Janavallava Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janavallava Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. A reading from Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 15. The Pandavas retire timely. And today we are reading text 36. Yada mukundu bhagavani mamahim jahau Shravaniya satkata tada eva pratibuddha cetazam abhadrahetu kalyanavartata yada mukundo bhagavani mamahim jahau swatanva shravaniya satkata tada eva pratibuddha cetazam abhadrahetu kalyanavartata yada mukundo bhagavani mamahim jahau swatanva shravaniya satkata tada eva pratibuddha cetazam abhadrahetu kalyanavartata yada mukundo bhagavani mamahim jahau swatanva shravaniya satkata tada eva pratibuddha cetazam abhadrahetu kalyanavartata yada when Mukunda, Lord Krishna, Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Imam, this, Mahim, earth, Jahau, left, Swatanva, with his self-same body, Shravaniya Satkata, hearing about him is worthwhile. Tada, at that time, Aha eva, from the very day, Aprati Buddhachetazam, of those whose minds are not sufficiently developed. Abhadrahetu, cause of all ill fortune. Kali anvavatata, Kali fully manifested. Translation. When the personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, left this earthly planet in his self-same form, from that very day, Kali, who had already partially appeared, became fully manifest to create inauspicious conditions for those who are endowed with a pure fund of knowledge. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The influence of Kali can be enforced only upon those who are not fully developed in God consciousness. One can neutralize the effects of Kali by keeping oneself fully under the supreme care of the personality of Godhead. The age of Kali ensued just after the Battle of Kurukshetra, but it could not exert its influence because of the presence of the Lord. The Lord, however, left this earthly planet in his own transcendental body, and as soon as he left, the symptoms of Kali Yuga, as were envisaged by Maharaj Yudhishthira prior to Arjuna's arrival from Dwarka, began to manifest. And Maharaj Yudhishthira rightly conjectured on the departure of the Lord from the earth. As we have already explained, the Lord left our sight, just as when the sun sets, it is out of our sight. Translation again. When the personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, left this earthly planet in his self-same form, from that very day, Kali, who had already partially appeared, became fully manifest to create inauspicious conditions for those who are endowed with a pure fund of knowledge. Om Ajanatamrandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umblitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayarupagadamayam Dadati Swayapadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, just to quickly, not even make comments actually, but just to quickly go through the verse and purport again, just a few kind of key things that jump out. When Krishna left this earthly planet in his self-same form, and then that's the translation, and then the very last sentence of the purport is, as we've already explained, the Lord left our sight, just as when the sun sets, it is out of our sight. You know, in the Bhagavad Gita, it's stated, Janma Karma Chame Vidyam, in that verse, and it's explained that the Lord's appearance or his birth are transcendental. And likewise, his departure is transcendental. So Krishna is neither born or appears as we do, and he neither departs or dies as we do. So Prabhupada's giving the example, just when the sun sets in the evening, and particularly if you don't have any moon, right? When the sun sets in the evening, it's dark, it's pitch dark. You can't see without artificial light, you just can't see, it's pitch dark. But it doesn't mean that the sun is not there, it's just out of our sight. So likewise, Krishna has left. He's out of our sight, but he's still in his self-same, pure, transcendental body. Like that, and these are all pastimes. He has now left this particular pastime, if you like. Okay, so when he left in his self-same form, from that very day of Krishna's leaving, Kali, who had already partially appeared, became fully manifest, and then fully manifest to create all these inauspicious situations and all these inauspicious conditions for us, like that. So that's interesting as well. He'd already partially manifest. So it's like when there's an event happening, and Kali, of course, is a person in that sense. So when a personality, some big event is about to happen, there's always preparation for it. It doesn't just happen. There's preparation that goes into it beforehand, reconnaissance and all that kind of stuff, to use military language. So that stuff was already happening. But now, as soon as Krishna actually was out of sight, fully out of sight, that's when Kali, could really get going, for want of a better phrase. But then the first sentence of the purport is pretty extraordinary. The influence of Kali can only be enforced upon those who are not fully developed or are not fully Krishna conscious. And one can just neutralize the effects of Kali by keeping oneself fully under the supreme care of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's really interesting. And again, going back to the point that Krishna, he's still here. Prabhupada talks so much in relation to the spiritual master, and of course Krishna ultimately is the supreme spiritual master. Prabhupada talked about the two types of association you can have. The Vapu association, the direct physical association, if you like, and then the Vani association, or the association through consciousness and understanding and memory, like that, and knowledge. And they're equally, actually it's described that Vani, the second kind, is even more potent, but they're both incredibly potent like that. So just because Krishna's gone out of sight, or we've, his Vapu association is no longer with us, is neither here nor there. Krishna can still fully protect us. We can still take full shelter of Krishna and full protection of Krishna. And if we do that, then Kali cannot touch us. So even though Kali now, has, Krishna, Kali both thinks, Krishna's gone, so therefore I can kind of take over. And in that sense, Kali can, but only if we let him. Only if we let Kali dictate to us and dominate to us can that happen. If we take full shelter of Krishna, then Kali just cannot touch us. We have an impenetrable shield all around us, and Kali cannot penetrate our impenetrable shield, which is Krishna consciousness. So there's no need for despair. There's no need for concern even. Krishna's fully manifest in his holy name. And if we take shelter in Krishna and Krishna's holy name, we're fully protected. We're fully vaccinated from the pandemic that is the influence of Kali, which manifests in different ways, lust, anger, greed, etc. But primarily the two things is, as we understand from the name Hiranyakashipu, who was the great demon who challenged Krishna, and of course Krishna's pure devotee, Prahlad Maharaj, and his name means gold and soft pillows, which basically means money and sex. And the material world just doesn't exist without those two things. That's what, I think there's a song, isn't there? That's what makes the world go round in that sense. It's a combination of those two things. Money, so people can feel they can do things, they can have things and all of that. And then when they have loads of money, loads of gold, what's the enjoyment that, the pinnacle of material enjoyment is sexual activity. So those two things, so Kali Yuga manifests those, is a manifestation of those two things. And, but we cannot be touched by either of those if we take shelter in Krishna like that. So, as it says, Kali hadn't really made much progress up until this point. Waiting in the wings, if you like, was Kali. Until Krishna departed. And then Kali really got moving. So on one fateful day, which in one sense is coming up. It's a little hard it's just such a wonderful pastime, and of course it's directly connected here because we are now transitioning from Kali not being able to get going, if you like, or fully manifest, etc., as I say, waiting in the wings. But now this is the transition to that happening. So on one fateful day, when Krishna was out of sight, it's interesting that as well, it's so funny, it's kind of like the relationship as children, that we would have with our parents or with our school teachers or something like that. I remember in school, it's terrible actually, but I remember in school, when the teacher would turn their back, so they'd get the blackboard, writing on it or whatever, so they'd have to turn around for that and they couldn't see you. But then children would get up to all sorts, me included. And particularly it's terrible actually, because you wouldn't do it with all teachers. Some teachers had a kind of natural authority or whatever it was that you knew you better not mess here because if you get caught you're in big trouble. But other teachers somehow they didn't have that potency or that shakti. And of course kids being kids, we would immediately identify that and then take advantage of it. But anyway, as soon as those types of teachers would turn their back, then all mayhem would break out in the class like that. So this is very, very similar. Krishna's out of sight, so the bad school children, of which there's none more bad or worse than Kali, they would do their darndest, they would do their worst like that. So one fateful day, Maharaj Parikshit, who was the king, succeeding Maharaj Yudhishthir, great saintly king Parikshit, Maharaj Parikshit, he saw that there was a person, Maharaj Parikshit was out, just out in his kingdom, if you like, keeping an eye on things, making sure everyone was happy, because that's the first duty of a leader. The first duty actually is kind of connected, but the first duty is to protect your citizens, but also that you make sure that they're happy, that they have all their basic needs and they're happy, they're content, they're not stressed, they're not in anxiety. And that, of course, is another definition of the spiritual world, Vaikuntha, that place which is free from all anxiety, free from all stress. So a king like Maharaj Yudhishthir, Maharaj Parikshit, and Maharaj Yudhishthir, of course, but Maharaj Parikshit. So he's out anyway, and he's wandering around, and then he sees what Prabhupada describes as a low-class person, a low-class Sudra actually, as we've discussed before. There are 4 basic categories of society. It does not mean, by the way, that all Sudras are low-class. So Maharaj Parikshit was out, wandering around, and he saw this person, and they were beating both a bull and a cow. They were beating like that with a big club. The bull was described as pure white as a lotus flower, and beautiful, just to observe, absolutely beautiful. But simultaneously was in a fearful situation, as we know, if we're under threat. What to speak of if we're being physically beaten, etc. Anxiety and fear, etc. Manifests in our heart, and we're fearful, and it also has physical manifestations. So the bull was trembling and urinating like that because of the horrible situation that they were in. And Maharaj Parikshit, he was well equipped. He was a Kshatriya, the king, a great warrior like that. So he had his weapons, his bows and arrows, etc. And he came, and then he spoke. We'll say spoke. He spoke to the person, to this low-class Sudra who was beating the bull, with a very deep, grave, solemn, heavy voice, and it's actually described as it sounded like thunder. And then he demanded, he said, who are you? Who are you? What are you doing, basically speaking, You dare to beat personification of religion, the bull. Yeah, who are you in my kingdom doing that? My duty, my goal is to protect all citizens, and here you are, brazenly beating not even just an ordinary person, but actually the personification of religion. Dharma, that's the bull, as we know, mother cow. The cow is known as our mother, and the bull is known as our father, and in particular the father of religion, Dharma, in terms of our constitutional position, our constitutional activity, like that, what we're all supposed to be doing, and the bull is manifesting that or representing that. And Maharaj Pariksit was saying to this person, this low-class Sudra, was saying that by your dress, because he was dressed like a king, actually dressed like a very, opulent, but also elevated person, if you like. Again, kings, kshatriyas are meant to protect the citizens, so he's dressed like a king, meant to protect the citizens, but here he is beating like that, and completely going against the principles of Dharma by beating the bull like that. So Maharaj Pariksit, he was demanding, who are you? What's going on? How dare you beat an innocent cow, an innocent bull? And why are you doing it? Is it simply because now Lord Krishna has left our sight that you think you can get away with this? Again, going back to the school analogy, in terms of thinking the teacher's out of sight, that we can do anything we like. And of course, even that's interesting, because you may think you can do anything you like, but still, for most, they would stay within certain boundaries. But here, Kali, the low-class Sudra, it's like, yeah, Krishna's out of sight. Okay, so what maybe you're going to do something, but that doesn't necessarily affect others. I don't know, whatever. I suppose in a modern day, it's like watch a movie or something like that. But that's not good enough here for Kali. Kali's actually going for it's kind of like the very things that Krishna represents. He's going to the heart of it and immediately trying to destroy that, simply because Krishna is out of sight like that. So Maharaj Pariksit then warned him, but just to let you know, whatever you think, not what you think you're doing, but whatever you think you can get away with, you're doing this. You think, I'm just letting you know that beating an innocent person, causing suffering to another sentient being, again, what speak of the personification of religion, from my perspective as the king, this is a criminal act, and I will have to punish you accordingly. Then Maharaj Pariksit stopped and turned to the bull himself, and he asked, who are you? He asked the same question, who are you? For the first time in a kingdom, that's always been protected by kings like Pariksit himself, but then Yudhishthira, and going back, it's always been a protected place, a protected kingdom. I see you grieving, being beaten and grieving with tears in your eyes. And up until now, see, that's another point for us to consider. For us, in this lifetime, we've grown up with this, experienced it all the time. This is the norm, if you like, and it's not the norm, by the way. We've allowed it to become the norm, but it's very much not normal. But anyway, in that sense, we've allowed it to become the norm. But for Maharaj Pariksit, this was the first time this had ever happened. It was kind of an inconceivable that this was actually happening like that. So he was wondering, who the bull was. He actually then considered that he might be some special demigod, etc., coming to, basically show how horrific this whole thing was, and the ushering in of the age of Kali Yuga. But then Maharaj Pariksit, he was trying to reassure both the bull and the cow, that as long as he's living and as long as he's the ruler, there'll be no need for them to be in fear, and everything will be all right, that he's going to correct this situation. And he explained that, as the king, his good name and his duration of life and his good rebirth, they all disappear, they vanish when living beings are terrified by wrongdoers, miscreants, criminals in his kingdom. When these things are happening, then his good name, his duration of life, etc., and his good rebirth, all of these things, he loses them all as a result. So even he was expressing, even from a motivated point of view, there's no question that he would want this to happen or allow this to happen. And it's the prime duty, as we've discussed, the prime duty of the leader or the head of state or the king, to first subdue the sufferings of those who are in a suffering condition, to protect them and free them from that. And then he said, therefore, because this man, this low-class Sudra, is obliterating all of those principles with his brutal violence against other living beings, that he is going to deal with the situation. So he was reassuring them like that. So he asked him then, and it's interesting because there's a lovely picture of this scene, and you see Kali, the miscreant, the offender, the criminal, if you like. You see him sort of in the distance, not too far in the distance, but in the distance and kind of skulking and whatever. As Maharaj Parikshit is asking this next question of the bull, he's asking, who cut off your 3 legs? The bull is standing there on one leg. And this is a very symbolic thing as it relates to the age of Kali, that there are 4 legs or 4 yugas, Satya-Treta-Dwapa and Kali Yuga, and they all represent, each of those yugas are represented by 1 leg of the bull. And now, because we've entered into Kali Yuga, the last yuga, those other 3, the qualities that represent those other 3 yugas are now gone, and that's been represented by these 3 legs that have been cut off from the bull, and the bull is standing just on 1 leg, hobbling, if you like, on 1 leg. So he asked, who has done this? Who's cut these 3 legs off you? And as a king, that he's obedient to the laws of Dharma, or the laws of religion, and that there's nobody who is as unhappy as him, as the king, to see that this has happened. And he said, bull, you're offenseless, thoroughly honest and offenseless. Therefore, I'm wishing, but I'm going to ensure nothing but good for you. So please tell me who has done this, which is blackening the name of all saintly personalities, etc. So he's asking who has done it, so as that justice can be served, and not just that justice can be served, but that people like that are dealt with, so as that other citizens and etc. are not under risk and are not under the threat of that brutal violence like that. So again, going back to what the duty of the head of state is. So he wanted to know, and as I say in the picture, you can see Kali not too far away. So the bull simply could have just, pointed. I'm not sure how it would have pointed, maybe nodded his head or something, but he could have indicated that Kali is just over there. But he didn't do that. He then started talking about all the different ways and all the different reasons why he, in this case, the bull himself, but also, everybody that in the material world, all of us, where different situations come upon us and different things happen to us, explaining the source of those different things. And he said, very famous verse actually in the Srimad-Bhagavatam, that it's very difficult to ascertain, this is Dharma speaking to Maharaj Parikshit, that it's very difficult to ascertain the particular person, miscreant, criminal, whatever you want to call them, the particular person who's caused our sufferings, because we're bewildered by the different opinions and views of, I think the phrase used is theoretical philosophers. And this is interesting for us actually. The world presents us with so many challenging situations, and obviously if we have no knowledge and we can't put things in context, we're in a massive disadvantage. But then the second thing is, even if we seek knowledge, who are we receiving that knowledge from? Where's that knowledge coming from? That's also problematic, because if we get the wrong information and act accordingly, then we're acting on wrong information. So this point about philosophers, speculative philosophers giving us wrong information. So he then says some of those philosophers, they declare that one's own self is responsible for their personal happiness and distress, and then others say it's superhuman powers that are responsible, and then others again would say that that activity is responsible, and the gross materialistic view maintain that nature is the ultimate cause. Then others would say there's no cause whatsoever. So there's all these different speculative thoughts flying around like this. But the main point was that Dharma could have just pointed to Kali and said he was the culprit. But the lesson that he's giving us is a very interesting thing. And of course the difference in between these two personalities, Dharma and Maharaj Parikit's duty, as he said, is to protect the citizens. So therefore he wants to know who has committed this crime so he can deal with that, because that's his duty. But Dharma, the personification of religion, he's not feeling that it is his duty to sort of, point out who the people are. He's feeling that he has to take it for himself, which is just a wonderful reflection. Not just reflection, but it's a wonderful quality to be able to do that. That when some adversity comes upon us, that we don't seek to blame others for it, that we seek to accept it as our lot, if you like, and not regret that, or not be resentful of it. In fact, actually, Srila Prabhupada says that in a few places in different purports, where he says we should not resent the agent of our karma, because it's our karma, and therefore it's there to educate us and to help us, and therefore we shouldn't resent it because it's there to help us. Now, of course, that doesn't mean, it may mean sometimes, but it certainly doesn't mean all times, that the person who is the agent of our karma and giving us our karma, if you like, that means that's okay. So here's the personification of Kali. He's administering this karma to Dharma the bull, and Dharma's accepting it that way. But that does not mean that that Kali doesn't get a reaction for that. So the complexities of karma is quite an amazing thing. But ultimately, Prabhupada says we shouldn't resent the agent. They'll be dealt with. If they deserve whatever it is they deserve, that will come in due course, and that's fine. That will be looked after. But for ourselves, we shouldn't be focusing on that, and as Prabhupada says, resenting those people who are inflicting our karma, because ultimately we deserve whatever karma is coming our way. And it's just so helpful to be able to first hear that information, assimilate that information, understand that information, and ultimately fully realize that information. It's so beneficial for us, actually. So after hearing this, when Maharaj Pariksit was hearing Dharma speak like this in such a wonderful, glorious, philosophical way, he became fully satisfied. And he said that, although you're in the form of a bull, I can see that you are actually Dharma. You're the personification of Dharma, because you know what real religion is, or the real spiritual path is, and you're speaking according to the understanding that the destination intended for a perpetrator of an irreligious act. So you do something wrong, there's a certain destination that you are designated to go to, but that you're also understanding that if the recipient of that irreligious act, if their only focus, their only meditation is on getting revenge against the person who has inflicted their karma on them, that the same destination awaits them as well. A destination that none of us would like. So it's just really intriguing kind of to understand that, because certainly I would say in the world that we live in, there is an understanding, if you like, or perception certainly, that if you're hard done by, if something has happened to you and it's really wrong, really cruel, somebody's inflicted great pain or suffering on you, or someone's inflicted great pain and suffering on your loved ones like that, that there is an understanding. In the Bible, of course, says an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, but in fairness, it also says, that if you get slapped, you should turn the other cheek. So just to put that in context. But still, that eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, it is a kind of a concept that's accepted, that's right and just, that you get your justice like that by the other person suffering. But here it's been explained, no, there's a higher philosophical understanding, spiritual understanding, that no, let that go. Yes, that will be dealt with, but you let it go. You don't get involved in that, and just accept that whatever happened to you was just and right, and that's the best way for us to grow and learn. And ultimately, the understanding is that the best way we can grow and learn is to take shelter of Lord Krishna. And this is what today's verse and purport are really focusing on. But these are all steps on the way to actually understanding that this karma has come my way. It's horrible, it's hellish, but let me not focus on who's inflicting it on me. Let me understand that I deserve it. But that isn't the ultimate. We don't just want to keep on receiving the karma here in the material world, even with that elevated understanding that we don't, focus on the perpetrator and we don't resent the agent of our karma. That isn't the end game. That's a great staging post for freeing ourselves from that aspect and moving forward, but it's not the end game. The end game is to take shelter, as Prabhupada is telling us, in Krishna consciousness, and then we're freed from everything. There's none of this that it's not just that we're dealing with it in the right way. We don't have to deal with it anymore. We have completely transcended the whole situation like that. So it's all about understanding Krishna's ever present, whether it's in Vappu or Vani form, he's ever present, and as long as we take shelter of him, stay connected to him, we'll be protected from everything that the material world can throw at us, including what we can throw at ourselves by misunderstandings or wrong understandings of any given situation. And it's interesting that the very last verse, if you think about it, the very last verse of the Bhagavad Gita, which is Krishna speaking, Prabhupada is speaking here today, in the purport explaining this to us. The very last verse of Bhagavad Gita is Krishna speaking himself, where he says, Yatra Yogeshvara Krishno Yathā Parto Dhanurdara, that wherever there is Krishna, actually, I'm very sorry, I'm very, very sorry, they are not Krishna's words, but they are the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita, spoken by Sanjay actually, but they are the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita. Yatra Yogeshvara Krishno Yathā Parto Dhanurdara, that wherever there is Krishna, wherever, the master of all mystics, and wherever there's Arjuna, this incredible devotee, wherever there's Arjuna, the supreme archer, there will always be, actually I think the phrase used is almost certainly, but I think we can take it as there'll always be opulent victory, extraordinary power and morality. So, same point, that we connect with Krishna no matter what the external situations are, as long as we have Krishna's protection and shelter, either in his Vappu form as Arjuna did prior to what's happening here, he had his Vappu, but then if we have his Vani protection, then nothing can touch us. Kali, Maya Devi's service is to make sure that nobody goes back to the spiritual world who's not qualified, because Krishna's kingdom is pure and it cannot be contaminated by any negative thought or anything material like that. So she's doing a service for Krishna, protecting Krishna's pure kingdom like that. But she, in tempting us, or Kali here, etc., none of them can touch us. We have, as I said at the beginning, this protective shield around us, and none of them can touch it as long as we stay within that protective shield. And of course we can learn even from the Ramayana on that Sita Devi had a protective shield, that she stepped outside and then got into trouble. But as long as we stay within that protective shield, then none of these things can touch us, and we'll always be safe, protected, free from anxiety, and blissful. Hare Krishna. Srimad-Bhagavatam.